Hello everybody and welcome back. As you can see, we are finally back to the Chevelle where we left off at this thing the last time. I just finished rebuilding that old worn out 402. Got that thing slapped back in there, got her through cam break-in, but had a couple of issues we had to shore up before we could get it back on the road. So for the last 2 weeks here, I've just been putting miles on her, getting the rings settled in, taking care of small little issues, taking care of old issues we've been neglecting, just getting this thing ready to go back to the track. So let me take you back in time and get you caught up on the week. There are just a few small little things left to button up before we can hit the road. One of them is back here. Still need to come up with a solution for the vacuum. Now I've got a little fitting from Jegs that's a really low profile. Comes with 2 1/8-inch NPT ports on it that should fit in there really nicely. Otherwise I might try to also see if I can get like a 45-degree bend in there and get the original tree to set up. But just need to get my booster here hooked up and the vacuum modulator. Either one of those should end up taking care of the solution, but have 2 approaches for that. My throttle cable here is kind of old and tattered and not the greatest. The kind of plastic piece to it broke off, so it kind of flops in there at a weird angle, and this piece kind of likes to hit the grommet here, and then it doesn't want to pull all the way open to wide open throttle, so definitely not ideal. Got a replacement on order for that, along with a radiator shroud, so once those show up we'll get those installed in here. Never had cooling issues before, but now that we've obviously got a bit more power, probably a good idea to just make sure that we have decent cooling. And speaking of the radiator, I did already come up with a solution for the problem over here. If you remember during break-in, this stupid fitting here decided it wanted to strip out and was just splattering transmission fluid just about everywhere. Made quite the mess, but ended up just boring the hole out ever so slightly, jammed a larger NPT fitting in there, got it nice and torqued down in there with some sealant, and it's just a barb fitting there, so small little chunk of rubber hose, got it clamped down, no more leaks. Gotta go pick up the PCV grommet here locally, which we'll do here shortly, and some clamps to finish off the exhaust underneath the car. And then when we're under there, we'll also do the oil change. So the engine's got just its cam break-in time on it right now, a couple of minutes of idling, a startup or 2 of just moving it in and out to make sure that the transmission fluid levels were all good. We're gonna get all that drained and everything else. Probably go with VR1, the 1030. Should be good for our clearances, and we'll use that for our break-in on all of the rings. We'll get about 500 miles on that or so, and then we'll change it out again before we end up at the track. So not a whole lot to do before we can hit the road, but I'm going to just start knocking these things out, run pick up some parts, and we'll get to it all. So here underneath the car, I've just been working on tightening up all the exhaust clamps here. I am missing a couple there at the front, but I straightened up the mufflers here as best I could. That also raised that center portion there probably about another inch or so, but everything seems to be doing pretty good there. Here are the clamps that are missing right here and here on both sides. Tightened up the collectors, got the oil just draining out up there up front, but that should be about it. Looks like the oil's finished draining. Gonna go ahead and get that old filter off there, throw on a Wix, and then we'll top her off with fluid. Gonna run out and try to find some clamps for this, get those tightened down, and then we should be finished here underneath the car. So some new parts have finally started to show up. Gonna go ahead and try to work on this throttle cable, and I was just looking over the new one here, and looks like it clips on the inside to the firewall, so it'll probably be easiest for me to try to get under there and unclip it from the inside rather than just grabbing a hold of it with some pliers and yanking a bunch, making a mess here. And there's not that great of accessibility to it from up here, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Let's go see what it looks like from the inside. So here upside down under the dash is what I'm after right here. And it looks like I'm probably gonna have to get in here with some pliers, just trying to squeeze it with my fingers and just can't quite get it to go. But not too terrible of accessibility. So everything went together pretty easy on that, not too bad at all. At first I thought I was gonna have to pull my throttle pedal off because the new cable comes with like a solid plastic piece that slots into the pedal. And the existing one here doesn't have like a groove cut into it to be able to slide the cable through. So you're supposed to basically just pull the plastic piece out and then slide the cable through the pedal. So I just reused my existing plastic piece. It seemed like it was in pretty good condition there. and I cut the other one off, but I cut a groove in it so it would come off the same way if I ever need to reuse it. I've got it on hand, but everything went pretty good down here. I've already got it hooked up there at the throttle, or at the carburetor, so everything should be good to go now. So with the old cable here out of the car, I can show you all the problems I was having with it. Most of it stems right here from this worn out little rubber bushing that held it to the throttle bracket. And because this was so worn out, it's basically like a hardened plastic at this point. What it allowed the thing to do is, instead of it being nice and straight and holding everything nice and true to kind of the carburetor itself, it was allowing the throttle cable here to pivot based on the tension of the sleeve. And the sleeve here is pretty strong. It's got quite a bit of tension to it. So essentially this thing would be in there bent at like a weird angle depending upon how this was bent up from the firewall to the carburetor. So that created problems because this little plastic snout right there was broken off and just kind of travels freely. And this would get ahead of the bushing like this. And then when you have this kind of bent at an angle, something like that, when you'd pull the throttle, this piece would get caught up and it would get stuck on that grommet there. Then it would bind up on this portion where it actually connected to the carburetor, and you would feel it when you'd push the throttle down, like it gets stuck, and you know it wasn't going all the way down to the floor or close to the floor, so you'd have to like shove it a little bit harder, then finally it would kind of break free and pop loose. And so yeah, just not ideal. More of a quality of life issue, but should be a whole lot better now. So in keeping with the theme of quality of life changes, there's been one thing that's just kind of nagging on me. I fixed most of the exhaust as you saw, but we got one last thing to take care of here. So over here we got this pipe, nice and tucked, looks great. Over here we got this sad, droopy, unhappy guy that's kind of just way down low. So I'm gonna try to loosen up on that, see if I can twist that, get that to come up a little bit more, tuck it a little tighter. And then I do have the Chevelle style tips for back here as well. Got those from Pipes, they look fantastic. But as always, no hardware. I'm not sure if the tariffs have just put a run out there for U-bolts or what the deal is, but I've been short on U-bolts this entire time when it comes to this pipe stuff. Just not sure why they don't include mounting hardware with these things for as much as they cost, but we'll deal with that a little bit later down the line, see if we can get this thing looking a little better. So that's looking a whole lot better. Just a small little tweak makes a big change in the appearance back here. So I didn't do a very scientific measurements on it, didn't get the tape measure out or anything like that. I just put the tips on there from Pipes just to kind of test fitting them and compared to clearance that they had. Got it where it looked pretty even and went from there, so that should be good to go for now. All right, so I've got her moved out. We should be all ready for our maiden voyage. Got my fancy microphones on. Let's do a quick walk around and listen to this thing. Sounds pretty good. Had just a small little bit of white smoke there on first startup, but nothing too bad, so let's go ahead and load up and hit the road. All right, so let's go. Now I apologize for the noise. It's going to be loud in here, especially having no back window. Definitely going to take me a while to get used to the high stall converter in this thing. Really haven't driven many cars with a high stall, so it's kind of like driving a CBT almost. Seems to be driving pretty good so far though. What a significant difference. Holy crap. So put about 100 miles there on the Chevelle. It drove absolutely beautifully while I was gone. Radiator shroud showed up and a couple of other parts. Picked up some stainless clamps on the way so we can get our tips on the rear of this thing. Try to get as much of that exhaust out and away from the car as possible, since a lot of it makes its way into the cabin. Also got the fittings there for the vacuum stuff. I'll try to get that taken care of. I kind of rigged something up in there right now. It's not very great. I'll show you on that when I take it apart here, but let's just go ahead and start on the back, let the engine and radiator cool down a little bit before we start popping the hood and roasting ourselves. So I bolted on the tips there. Definitely makes it look a little bit better. Need to do a little bit of work. The rear valence here is a little bit beat up, especially on the passenger side right here. So it looks a little bit odd, but definitely looks better with them on there. So next I want to try to address the vacuum situation. Here's the fitting that I picked up from Jegs, and it's pretty low profile. You can see that's just got 2 amputee ports on it, and I can fit a couple of different fittings in there. But when it's stripped down, it's nice and tight, so I should be able to tighten that down into the manifold there, have plenty of clearance, angle the 2 ports kind of off and away from that runner there. Then I've got a couple of options here. I can either put this kind of barbed fitting in there and go directly to a hose, or I can cut down this pipe here, put a flare fitting on it, use this adapter here, and then kind of keep the original style, at least part of the metal tube there, connect that back up to my hose. Then we'll use this one here, maybe a smaller one if I can find one, that'll actually go to our vacuum modulator, but should give me plenty of clearance. I'll actually be able to get this tightened in there. The other solution I had wasn't able to get that 90-degree tightened down very well, so I think I had some vacuum leaks with that. This should work out a whole lot better. So back here underneath the hood, I've got the new vacuum system installed. Everything went really nicely. That Jegs fitting fit in there pretty great. I was able to just kind of organize and route everything in the directions I needed it to be. Made my own little new hard liner right here out of some aluminum pipe I had laying around. Got that taken care of. Came through, retorqued all of the header bolts. Double checked the torque there on the carburetor studs. They were a little bit loose. Over on this side, had a bit of an oil leak. There was quite a bit of oil just kind of sprayed right here. It's starting to pool up on this side here. And I think it was because I left these 2 valve cover bolts loose. I think I was fighting with that rear one back there, trying to get that one taken care of, and then just forgot that I didn't do the centers there. But I torqued those down. Some of it almost seemed like it was coming down there from the timing cover region, where, if you remember right, it was kind of a bit of a tight fit. Wasn't very happy with the way it all fit up, but hopefully that's not where it's coming from, because that's going to be a bit of a chore to get access to and tighten everything else down. But that's been about it in terms of leaks and stuff like that. I did pull the PCV valve out because the way I had it in there was no baffle. That thing was sucking up a ton of oil. So I'm gonna try to drive it around a little bit without it for now. See if some of my blue smoke clears up. It definitely cleared up a ton of it at idle. So I think I was just sucking way too much oil up through that thing. Gonna see if I can find a PCV that fits the baffled gaskets that I have, or the baffled grommets that I have. Since I had to swap things out, I just went to a big round rubber one that had no baffle, no nothing, was just open on the bottom, and clearly that's not going to work. So let's see if we can get this radiator shroud figured out. Now I believe the bottom here just slots into a pair of clips that are on the bottom of the support there. I can see one on this side, and then there's another one right there just in front of the fan blade. And I believe it just slides into those little metal retaining clips. Then I believe it bolts in place up top here, but it doesn't look like the holes are going to line up at all, so probably have to pull that off, drill a couple of bolt holes in there, and either some self-tappers or something like that. But let's go ahead and see if I can get this in there. Might have to pull the fan off to be able to drop this down. See if I can get it down in those slots, and then we'll worry about the alignment from there. So I've run into a little bit of an issue here. I've got it dropped into place down there on the bottom. Everything seems to be lining up just fine, but I can't quite pull it flush. There's like a bump out down there. You can see about midway up that's hitting the radiator, and there's no corresponding like divots in the radiator for it to go into. So not quite sure what the deal with that is. If I try to move this over more towards the right, it runs into things down below there, so I can't really shift its location any. I would think that's supposed to sit on top of the radiator in this corner and not like sit down inside that little channel there. So probably just gonna have to get the death wheel out and do a little bit of modification on this thing and try to get it to line up a little bit better. So here's the issue. We got this little bump right here in the middle. It's not there on the other side. There's definitely no divot in my radiator for this, and it's sitting right on top of the radiator there. So the only solution I can think of is to just cut it out of there. Not quite sure if it's just like a guide point for like the original radiators or what the deal is, but looks like my bolt holes up there are going to line up, so I'm going to try to find some of the little J-nuts there. We'll slide those onto the top brace and I'll be able to get some bolts in here, but everything else seemed to fit up pretty nicely, so shouldn't be too bad. Just hit it a little bit with the old flap attack there, got it all nice and flush. Found me some of the J-nuts and some bolts there, so should be all set to throw this in. So unfortunately, it seems I've run into another issue. The shroud seems to fit up beautifully, but not so much with the engine. As you can see there, the fan ends up sitting too high inside the shroud. There's just not enough space. So, not quite sure if I can flip it upside down maybe and gain another inch or two doing it that way. And just make some new bolt holes, but yeah, that's a bit awkward. Everything else seems to fit up on this thing beautifully other than that. So, maybe I just got it in here backwards. So things are definitely a bit frustrating on this. Here at the top, you can see how it sticks up about an inch or two there over where the bolt holes are. Down here at the bottom, it's kind of flush. So I would gain an inch or two, probably enough space if I could flip it over, but because of the way this thing's lined up here, it's off center. So that would mean I'd have to flip it over like this, then shove this side over towards the driver's side, but that's causing issues with the bottom part here. It no longer lines up. You see how there's like this curved section there and other things like that. So might be able to hack something up and get this to work, but then none of the bolt holes line up anywhere. So kind of frustrating. This was supposed to be for a big block car. I don't know if it's just that because of my core support issues and stuff like that that it's throwing it off, but I've kind of lowered my core support here in the front compared to where it was, so it should be relatively fairly close, and that's off by a significant margin, probably like at least 2 inches. And I don't think there's any issues with the engine mounts or where the engine is itself. So not quite sure if that's just for a different car or what the deal is. It's supposed to be the one for a big block car, but may just have to go without it for now. We really haven't had any heat issues, but certainly frustrating. Gonna have to do a bit of research on this and just see why this isn't fitting. So back underneath the car here, got a few things to button up. I want to try to get this transmission sealed up. I've kind of been putting it off for a while. Still haven't got my new pan in, but I at least want to try to get to the things I can. So I got to pull the governor out again, tweak on that. At least I kept my results from the last time, so I kind of have a good baseline of where to start. I think we're going to go with around like 15.5, 16 grams. Should get us around like 5,300, 5,400 RPM shifts, which should be just about perfect for this cam. Got a couple of other things to do under here as well. Get that shift seal replaced, get the speedometer drive pulled out, start hopefully reducing on the leaks under here. Looks like I took care of the oil leak we had at the front from the valve covers. That seems to be a whole lot better, so mostly just this nasty transmission back here to take care of. So this should be pretty familiar territory. You've seen me do this a number of times. Got the governor here exploded. It's time to play around with the weights once more. Now I did this previously on the engine as it came in the car, and as you saw, that thing was just so worn out. Everyone was telling me we needed to shift at 5,500, that sort of thing, but just made no power beyond 4,700, and that's what we had tuned this governor in for. So it was shifting right now around 46, 4,700. And to do that, I bought the tuning kit here that came with a bunch of different weights, a couple of different springs. We ended up using their D-stamped weight here, which I believe is 8.2 grams, 8.1. And then I modified on the original here and shaved off about 1 gram from this. Got that down 10.8. You put them together and it gets us 19 grams. And that was giving us those perfect consistent shifts right on that 4,700 RPM range, because we do have a split between the shift from first to second and second to third. I tried using the aftermarket ones and just trying to run like, I think it was the C and the D together. Yeah, I tried to run this pair together and I had very bad issues. It was extremely inconsistent. It was flaring up to 5,400 RPM. Sometimes it'd be like 4,900. And the issue is this C weight here. You can see how the little tabs that bend over were just not done the greatest on this one. They're not very flat. And then the way that they were drilled kind of gets into the radius of the bend a little bit. So in this weight is actually in the little carrier there. It binds on the sides. It kind of hangs up quite a bit. So I think that was the problem. And that was why I just threw that one aside. I just ground down on one of the factory weights here and ended up using that combination instead. But we also played around with a number of different other weights. We probably tried like 9 combinations back then, playing around and seeing what we ended up with. So 15 grams was getting us around like 5,600 RPM, somewhere around there. Probably a bit too much for this setup. We're making peak power right around like 49 to 5,000 RPM, somewhere in that range. So probably running out of steam around like 5,500. So I'd like to have my shifts right around that 53, 54 range. I think we're still making good power. That'll get us right in our power band on the shift. Should be ideal. So I'm thinking something around 16 and a half grams here. But I think this little guy here is going to be our hiccup. I think the only combination I have of weights to get there involves this guy. So if I ran D and C together, that's what gives me that 18 and a half. That's what I tried before. Didn't work out. I think I tried D and E. I think that was the first setup I ran. That's at 15.1. That was the really late shifts. That didn't work out for me. D and F is even lighter. So let's see, what kind of combinations can we get here? So I think I tried some kind of combination like C and E, or somewhere similar to that. That was right around like 17, but it wasn't using the C, and it was getting me around like 5,200 RPM, and that was around that 17 grams. So that's what I'm trying to target. It's about 16 and a half, and I think that'll get us to where we need to be. So C and E is just a little bit too much. So C and F would be about perfect, but I recall running this configuration. This was the one where it was extremely inconsistent, and I just blame this C weight here. So maybe if I just run the F weight here and just find another weight and modify it up so it's a similar weight to C here, then we'll be fine. I think everything else is just going to be too heavy. So probably just gonna have to modify on one to get what I need, but gonna go ahead, play around a little bit, see if I can come up with a solution to that. We'll put it all back together and slap her in the car and see how it goes. I think I managed to come up with a combination here that's gonna get me pretty close to where I wanna be. Using the E weight there from the aftermarket kit, I ground a little bit more out of the factory weight there, got that one down to about 9.4 there, and together these end up at about 16.2. Now I ran about a 17.3 in this before, and it was around like 5,200 RPM, around the 15s, and here it was around like 55, 56. So I'm hoping this will kind of split that difference, be around 53, 54, which should be perfect. If this ends up being a little bit too conservative for us, if I just swap the E for the F, that gets me about like 15.5, 15.6. So maybe that would be a better alternative as well. Add about maybe 500 RPM, something like that, if I feel it's just a little bit on the conservative side. But we're going to start with the E and see how it does that way there and go from there. So underneath the car, once again, got the old shift linkage here pulled off, trying to knock the bracket off there. Gonna go ahead and get the seal changed on that, hopefully stop that leak. And as you notice, we can actually shift the car manually now. We got plenty of space here between the exhaust and the linkage, so the engine's not smacking her out of gear. So by some miracle of luck, I was able to get the old seal out of there. Ended up using the old tool here for that. As you can see, lots of nastiness in there as well. Got the new seal here between my fingers, ready to drive back in there. Gonna go ahead, clean up on this, maybe spray some brake parts cleaner in there, get that cleaned up a little bit. Drive the new seal home, and hopefully we'll have one less leak and about 10 others to take care of after this. So next up is the old speedometer cable here, and she's pretty gooey and disgusting. Looks like that one might have been leaking for quite a while, so get that cleaned up, get that out of there, replace on the O-ring seal on that. Hopefully that'll slow things down for a little bit. And then we're just kind of waiting on the oil pan to come in, and we'll do that as well. Try to get the drive shaft out of here, take care of the seal there on the rear housing, and hopefully that'll take care of all the leaks underneath here. I got the old seal here pulled out of it, and she's pretty much just turned into hardened plastic at this point. Just basically just breaks every time you look at it, so definitely getting a leak back there. Tried to clean up on it just a little bit. Gonna go ahead and get the new O-ring on there and slap her back together. Alright, that should do it here underneath the car for today, so just waiting on the pan to show up and then we can address the remaining leaks, but hopefully that'll help at least a little bit for now. It's been about a day or two here, just been driving it, putting some more miles on it, testing out those governor changes, and well, had to pull it back apart again. After I did the weight change there, I ran with the 16.2, 16.1 grams in that vicinity, and that was getting me a big split. I was getting around 5,100 RPM, and I don't even know where the second and third shift was. It was revving out to like 5,800 and still not shifting, and you can definitely tell the car starts to run out of steam after 5,500. It drops off pretty quick, but up to 5,500 it is stout. First to second was around like 51, 52, somewhere in that vicinity. So I pulled the governor back out, and this time I just changed on the springs. I put in, I believe, the orange and the green spring, which are kind of the middle of the range for the kit that you get. I think Summit just rebrands the B&M kit. It all looks to be basically the same instructions, same weights, and same spring colors and everything else. And I put that in there, went out, drove it with that a couple of times. It is shifting just absolutely beautiful right now in second to third at 5,500, just dead on the money. First to second is around like 53, 54, so it really tightened up the difference and got those a lot closer. Pretty happy with where it is right now. So probably just going to leave the governor alone for now, call that good enough. As for leaks underneath the car, it has been doing much better since we got under there and plugged up on that transmission. At the front here, I did have a pretty significant oil leak. Ended up just gobbing on a bunch of RTV on the side of that timing cover where it meets the oil pan there in that corner. Got that at least stopped for now. It hasn't come back. That seems to be doing good. The car is definitely burning a lot less oil than it was. It is pretty minimal at the moment. It used to be you'd kind of pull it in and after a run and it would be smoking quite a bit. That's died off considerably. We still get a little bit out of the breather here on the passenger side. Nothing from that driver's side. I pulled the plugs over on the passenger side here and you can tell it's from that number 4 cylinder. And that was the one that had a lot of that rust staining in it, so that's why we're just not getting the greatest of seal on there, but this thing absolutely hauls for what it is. At this point, I think there's only 2 things left to really address, and I've got one little tiny oil leak at the very back of the oil pan. I'm gonna see if I can get under there and just tighten up on some of the bolts, see if that'll help slow it down. Otherwise, maybe just get in there, gob a little bit of RTV on the back of it, see if that works as well. Then of course, we've got to address the window back here. And I think, like I said, I'm just gonna clean up on the channels here, probably leave most of this alone for right now, and just glue this back in place. I mean, it looks rough, but the bottom channel here is pretty stout. It's just where it kind of comes over into this trim panel here that's really rotted out. The actual metal where the window will sit is pretty solid, top and bottom. It's just really the sides that are terrible. So we'll just clean up on all of that, get some primer down there, try to flatten it out as best we can. We'll glue a window back in here, and maybe we'll just go NASCAR style, weld in a couple of strips, just 2 strips top to bottom there, since I'll be cleaning this out, hopefully doing full quarters on the car over the winter here. And so that should at least get our window situation taken care of and make sure that thing ain't gonna go nowhere. But other than that, it is running beautifully. Got a little bit over a week left until the next track session, so just gonna keep getting miles on it. I think I'm just shy of 300 right now, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. Maybe got a little bit of carburetor work to do. It does have just the tiniest hesitation if you just mash it from a roll before it decides to go, but from a dead stop it just goes, and it spins these poor Mickeys like nothing else. So hopefully they'll hook up good at the track. I finally started attacking this rear window situation. Came through here with the wire wheel, got all the rust and crust out of there, got it all down to nice bare metal. Then I hit it with a couple of coats of etching primer, came over the top of that with just some satin chassis black. So I went back through, hit the channel with a little bit of urethane primer, got that set in there for about 20 minutes, then laid a big nice thick bead down of urethane window weld, got that all the way around, set the glass in there. Tried to get it lined up where I got as much metal contact as possible, so it might not be the most centered in the world, but everything looks to be set up pretty nicely. You can kind of just go around and see where the seal is kind of squished in between the glass there. Looks like we probably got about 90% coverage. There's a couple areas where you just don't really get any kind of squeeze, like this bottom corner, because there's just nothing there, but this should definitely hold it in there. Gonna probably let this set up for the next day or so. Go and see if I can find some strips here we'll cut out, and we'll just end up welding in 2 strips, probably one on either side there, just to guarantee that this thing does not travel anywhere on us. But I think that'll do it. Shifting that first to second, I kind of just lose track of it at times. Let's just try to stop here right quick and just do a good old pull from a stop. So as you can see, the Chevelle runs just beautifully now and pulls like a freight train. Not the happiest about the first to second shift. It's right around 48, 4900. But outside of getting into the valve body and rebuilding on that trans, I just don't think there's any way of fixing it. But the nice thing is we could finally shift the car manually now. If I drop her down in the first gear, the exhaust isn't shoving it out of gear anymore. So on the way back home, I gave that a try a couple of times. It crashes from first to second gear right around 5,300 RPM on its own. And then from there, I can just catch up on the shifts, throw her up into drive with my foot planted in it, and it'll shift that second to third at 5,500 RPM. So ends up working out really nice. It'd been nice if it was around like 54, because the thing is still pulling at that 53, but it'll be nice and consistent. I think that's what we'll try to do out at the track. All right, let's give us the old manual shift try here. Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Just let it manually, or let it automatically shift down and low and crash into second gear at 53. Then just manually shifted at 54. Beautiful. see how much that short shift made an impact, but that felt a whole lot better. All right, let's get home and get out of this heat. But other than that, the car is running fantastic. The rear window here looks to be doing pretty good. Was in there pushing on this thing and shoving on it quite a bit, and that glue is doing a great job. Held up really nice on the drive. Don't even have the strips in here yet. Might not even need them at this point, but I'll probably end up doing it just for sanity's sake. But that's probably going to do it here for this week. It's early Saturday morning. We got traffic out here like it's 5 p.m. on Friday or something like that, so not sure what's going on in town. But it's supposed to be in the mid-90s the remainder of the weekend into the start of next week, so probably just going to put the Chevelle away for a little bit other than just getting some miles on it. Only a couple of things left to address, and we'll just take care of those next week before we head out to the track. So that's going to do it. Just want to thank you all once again for watching, and I'll catch you next week, and we will have our time slips in hand hopefully and see what this thing can do.